Hello and welcome to Enquire to Choir. My name is Eva and I'm here to help you, fellow choir people. If this is your first time on the Enquire to Choir YouTube channel, welcome. This is a channel about how to work with choirs, especially if you're an amateur choir director or your choir is amateur. So if you wish, you can stick around and explore what is here. In this video, we're going to talk about a topic which is not an easy topic to talk about, especially on YouTube, especially when it comes to choirs, getting paid as a choir director, why you deserve to get paid as a choir director, and how much. I know there are many different situations, and I am aware that not everything can be paid in money. I'm also very aware that I do not know how your choir operates. Does it have a budget and how big it is? However, if you clicked on this video and if you are a choir director, you're probably thinking about the fact that you deserve to be paid, but you don't have the courage to think that way. Or you are in a position where you're getting hired as a choir director and you do not know how to set a price for your time. I have been in your shoes. I have been in volunteer positions. I've been paid small amounts, and now I'm in a position of my career when I can really say that I learned how to get paid. I had to work for that, even when it comes to my way of thinking about it. So, all things considered and the introduction being made, let's go on and start the video. Being a choir director is a great position to have, but if you have already been working as a choir director, you are probably aware that it's a difficult position. It's a beautiful one. There are plenty of benefits and I love my job, but the amount of times when I had to explain to people, there are a lot of skills I have to have in order to be a good choir director. It takes a lot of time and it's a specific way the job takes your time. Especially when it comes to amateur choirs and amateur choir directors, there are certain myths in music in general because everybody can make music. So being a professional musician is seen like, well, you're an artist, how can you monetize that? So that's a myth. I don't blame people who are not musicians not being able to understand the way it works. Being a choir director is often seen as a privileged position because out of all the people in the world, you have been chosen to be in front of a group of people and you're telling them what to do. Well, it is a privileged position, but there is a reason why you are at that position, so you deserve the credit. Plus, to be in that position, to stay at that position, you have to work a lot and you have to know a lot of things. My favorite myth and my favorite sentence is the one I got just yesterday. And it was like, would your choir perform at a wedding? I do not have the money to pay your choir, but we all know that money is spendable and a song is forever. Just a sentence every musician wants to hear. Again, I do not blame people for thinking this way, especially when thinking about choir directing, especially if you, the choir director in question who is asking for money, are an amateur. Because people still believe that it doesn't take much to be a choir director, but you deserve to be paid. If a choir has a budget for everything, for travels, for music scores, for wardrobes, for the choir rehearsal space, for competitions, and is getting paid on gigs, then you deserve to get a cut from that budget. And here is why. The first reason, which is completely rational one, which you can even give to your employer for him or her to understand the importance of you being paid, is if your choir director is paid to be your choir director, then you have a guarantee your choir will have a choir director there. Because if a person is a volunteer and is not getting paid, if something comes up, if there is an emergency, it doesn't even have to be an emergency. If there is a rehearsal and that night their son has a recital, if they're not getting paid to be at your rehearsal, they will go to the recital. It's not even a question. If they are tired, if they had a really long week, a really long day, or there has been too much work your choir has been asking, if your choir director is not getting paid, then your choir director can say, listen, we don't have to have this rehearsal. I'm too tired. Or if there is a really big performance coming up and your choir director is not getting paid, and suddenly they feel like the choir is not good enough, they don't want to be put in that position, they have every right to say, oh, I can't be there, I'm sorry, cancel the performance. This is the biggest reason why you have to pay your choir director, to have a guarantee that the person will be present. Because without a choir director, you have a choir. And if you know anything about choirs, you know that a group of people without clear guidance doesn't work as a choir necessarily. Not only that, but if your choir director is working with other choirs and they have a performance at the same time as you would want to have with your choir, if the other choir is paying your choir director and you are not paying your choir director, which choir will your choir director choose? I'm sorry, this is the way it works. People do not talk about it much, but this is the way it works. I work with 5 choirs. I'm very clear about things because we have to be. And no, I do not think that everything is about money. But I do think that I'm a professional who is working a lot to make her choir sound great. And I do have to make a living. And I cannot make a living if I work for free. The second reason why our choir director deserves to be paid is because it's not just about the rehearsals and the performances. It's about everything that goes before and after those. To plan a rehearsal takes a lot of time. To plan a concert season, it takes a lot of skill. To choose the scores your choir has to perform, can perform, and to know the way how to achieve that your choir can perform a score, it takes a lot of knowledge, it takes a lot of thinking, it takes a lot of reading, studying, a lot of experience, a lot of psychology skills, social skills, authority, bravery. To handle people in any way you know is very difficult, but especially when you stand in front of a group, to make everyone in the choir satisfied enough for them to feel appreciated and for them to feel the desire to be in a choir still, because that's not a given. To know how to read the scores, to know how to play the piano for the scores, to know how to plan a choir program, to know how long it will take for a certain song to be learned. That takes a lot of time outside of the rehearsals and the performances. So if you think that a choir director shouldn't be compensated, at least for the time being, on the rehearsals and the performances, I don't know what to tell you. It's really not fair. The third reason why a choir director should be paid is the amount of availability to the people in the choir. If I'm not getting paid to work with a choir, I will feel less of an obligation to interact with people from the choir. It's just not the same. I will find it enough to be there for the rehearsal and for the performance. But outside of that, I will not think of the choir as much. So if a choir person approaches me, there are a certain amount of time I can give, and that affects the way I work with the choir. So if you want a person dedicated to your choir as a choir director, then it's good to think about the way how to compensate that person. And contrary to popular opinion, being able to eat something at the rehearsal doesn't mean that the time was compensated enough. And I know I'm risking everything in this video, but I want to talk about that because I see many people out there getting disrespected as choir directors because they are thought that they do not deserve the money because it's such a privileged position. And I repeat, I know it's not the same for everyone, and we are going to get to it. I know, but it's not fair if a choir director is giving hundreds of hours for the choir to be able to work like a choir and not getting compensated for it. That's not fair. And nobody could tell me it is if the choir has the budget for it, or for at least a percentage of the fair price. Okay, so now we got that out of the way. You are a choir director and you want to set a price for your time. Here's the way to do it. The first thing you need to do is to decide how you want to be paid. Will it be per hour? And that is the thing I do. I'm getting paid per hour of my time. When it comes to the rehearsals and performances, so for every rehearsal, for every performance, I am getting paid by the hour. How much my hour is worth depends on many things. I cannot speak of numbers exactly because that wouldn't make any sense. We are in different countries, in different contexts, different choirs, different circumstances. So I will talk in general. If you're deciding on an hourly wage, what would be fair? The first step would be to search on the internet, choir director hour price, choir director hour money, and you will get the average sum. I tried that a few days ago and it worked. So now you have an approximate number and you take certain things into account when deciding how much is yours. It is perfectly reasonable to ask for a lower price if you think and know that you have less experience than a full choir director would have. If this is your first time working as a choir director, of course, you will not ask for the average price. You will ask for a bit lower. My hour is worth more than it was worth 10 years ago, which makes sense. If there are less obligations when it comes to working with the choir, so if you only have to be there for the rehearsals, for example, if you're working with a senior choir, you will not ask for the same amount of money than if you're working with a, almost professional choir. I mean, it's not the same. So it makes sense. The less obligations you have, the lower the price is. However, there are many things you have to consider when asking for a bigger price. And many of these things people do not talk about. So I want to talk about this to give you permission, to give you the knowledge and to give you the power to ask for a bigger price if you have to do any of these things, because all of these things that will be mentioned have to be taken into account. You have to look at the state of the choir. Is it a really good choir that is already well managed, in a really good condition, and you have to just continue that? Or you have to think of a completely new strategy. You have to renew a choir. You have to get many new choir members and incorporate them in the existing choir. And you have to think of a completely new program. These situations are very different. And if I have to think outside of the rehearsals how to give that much to a choir to make it better, then the hour I give at the rehearsal is much more complex and it asks for more money. Is it a big choir? Is it a small choir? It makes a difference. It's not the same working with 10 people and working with 50. 50 people in a choir and you, a single choir director without any assistance, is much different than working with 10 people. Just the amount of energy a bigger choir takes from you is different. And it is important how much energy they take from you, because they take the energy and you have less energy for other things and other people and other choirs. When are the rehearsals and when are the expected performances? It's not the same if the choir's rehearsals are on Mondays and on Saturdays. It's not the same Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, Fridays, because on Friday, if you work as a musician, there are chances that you will have a gig. Or on Friday, it's the end of the week, and if you have a regular job, a steady job during the week, and on Friday evening you have to have a choir rehearsal, I'm sorry, that's a different thing. Because especially if you're working with amateur choirs, the rehearsals are in the afternoon, at night, or during the weekend. If your performances are on weekends, expected to be on weekends, again, that's a different price because it's not the same. If the expected performances are on Sundays, and on Sundays there are weddings, there are christenings, there are family obligations, there are free days for most of people than having a performance on a Monday. That also means that if you have to be there for your choir during the weekend, you can't leave for the weekend. Especially if there is a holiday and you have a performance, you have to be here. So that's a different thing. You have to also be aware of the fact that rehearsals are every week in general. So every week you have to take the extra time to get to that rehearsal. And it's not only about the rehearsal. You have to come to the rehearsal and leave the rehearsal and come back home. Is the rehearsal space close to you? Can you get to it in a reasonable amount of time? Can you get to it by your car, or you can go to it on public transport? Do you have to take a cab to get to the rehearsal space? Especially consider this. Rehearsals tend to finish late in the evening. Do you feel safe coming back home on public transport that late? Or you want to take a cab to feel safe? And yes, this is an important question, especially I as a woman can confirm that. It's not the same going home at 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. If it is 9 p.m., I still feel safe enough to take public transport. If it's 10 p.m., I do not feel as safe. So I will take a cab, and a cab is much more expensive than public transport. Be aware that rehearsals are every week. It's not a one-time thing. Every week you have to do the same thing. So it's not the same. Especially, think of it this way. If you have to spend more money to get to the rehearsal and leave the rehearsal than you're getting paid, is that okay? Is that worth it? Of course, if you're getting the experience you need, if you get the recognition you need to get further in your career, okay. But do the math. Sometimes it's just not worth it. Sometimes it is. But you have to think about this. Of course, you have to think about the things that are expected of you. If you have less obligations, the price is lower. But if you have to organize things, if you have to plan things, if you have to manage things that you wouldn't necessarily manage in another choir, that's more effort and more money. A really big question to think about is, do you have to quit something to be able to do this? To be able to be a choir director, a dedicated choir director to this choir? If you have to quit something, then it better be worth it. If you have to lose gigs in order to be a good choir director for this choir, you have to take that into consideration. Because if your rehearsals are, for example, on Thursdays, and you know that, for example, I as a pianist, many gigs come on Thursdays because that's the timetable of our concert season when it comes to classical music here in Croatia. So it is a dedicated time in the schedule. If I have to give up that possibility in order to be a regular choir director, again, do the math. I always do the math. For example, I was given the opportunity to work on a workshop in a month during the whole week. And at first it sounded like a really good opportunity and the money was not bad. But I realized that during the week I would have to cancel 2 things in order to be able to do this. And I realized that it just doesn't pay off as much as it should for me to do this because the experience of the project is not something I need. I've done that a lot of times. And when you consider the amount of money I have to spend to attend that project because I have to arrive somehow to that venue every day, and when you consider that I have to lose 2 days of work from other places, the hourly wage was not worth it. So I turned it down. Would I be in that position 10 years ago? No. This is the first time I ever said, no, and actually it's not enough money. I will not do it. It's a privileged position to be in. But I worked for it and I want to be able to say no because I'm working a lot and I want to have a life outside my work. I love my job. I love my choirs. I love everything about them. But I also want to have a life. I want to have a full life. I want to spend time with my loved ones and with my family. And I want to have time, free time to be myself. So I really, I want to have that power. I want to own it. And to be honest, I'm just learning how to own that. So maybe making this video is a way how to work on this as well. And the final thing I want you to consider is about the exclusivity. Does your choir ask of you to be exclusive to them? For example, if you're working with other choirs and there is a choir competition and there is a category for your choirs, both of your choirs, for example, if a choir asks of you not to attend the choir competition with your other choir, I'm sorry, that deserves the extra pay because the exclusivity is something that is highly paid in corporate world and it's not talked about enough here in the music world. If they want the exclusivity, if they want me to stop working with other choirs and be only there for this choir and to be only this choir's director, I'm sorry, there is a price to pay for that. Exclusivity is a very important thing. Plus, if you're not at the beginning stage of your career, if you're a name who's recognized as a choir director, you definitely deserve to be paid fairly. It is not something to be afraid of. You are working so hard, you deserve to get the full price. Special mentions when it comes to the price are these things. The first thing is meetings. How many times have you been asked to attend a meeting about your choir? And how many times were you paid for that time? It took me a really long time to realize that I deserve to be paid to attend a meeting about my choir because that is also my time. It's not just rehearsals and performances. The second very important thing, arrangements. When it comes to the score arrangements, if you have to write an arrangement for your choir to sing, that is extra time and that takes a lot of skill and you deserve to get paid for it. The amount of money you will ask for it depends. You can give it for free, and sometimes I do. Sometimes if I think it's more valuable for the choir to sing it without me asking for the fee for the arrangement because I want the arrangement to be heard, or I don't think it's such a valuable arrangement. But it also depends if you have written the arrangement for this choir and further down the line you as a choir director leave the choir, does the choir own that arrangement, or you can take that arrangement and give it to another choir as well? That is a different thing. It's a different price if this particular choir owns the arrangement or you give them the full exclusivity. Another time we mentioned this word exclusivity, so it's another thing if the choir in question owns that arrangement and tells you you cannot work on that arrangement with another choir in the future. So if you have written the arrangement, you deserve to get paid. If you have given the arrangement to the choir and they have it exclusively, you deserve to be paid more. And to be honest, for every one of my choirs, there is a different kind of an arrangement when it comes to this. So you can choose and you have the right to negotiate this particular issue. Accompaniment. If you're playing accompaniment for certain performances and it is expected of you to be able to play the accompaniment, I'm sorry, that asks for a bigger price. you have the right to ask for a bigger price. Do you have to pay for some licenses when it comes to the computer programs to be able to work with this choir effectively? For example, we talked about how to write choral music in a specific program. You need to pay the license for it. And if you use that program exclusively to work with this choir in question, then I'm sorry, that is something you have to consider, because if you get paid to work with your choir, but you have to spend the money on the program to be able to write certain notes for them, you're losing money. I know it sounds like I speak like a pure capitalist, but I'm not. I don't want to apologize for the fact that I do my job and I ask to be fairly compensated for it. Because after all, if you have a choir director and if you expect me to do my job and to be there, even when I'm sick, even when my throat is so painful, but I still have to attend the rehearsal and I still have to talk really loudly and I still have to sing a lot and I do not have the privilege to be sick on performance day, I think it's fair to be fairly compensated. And I want to give you permission, again, a permission slip to ask for this. You deserve to get paid. It doesn't have to be a huge amount of money. It doesn't even have to be a fair amount of money, but at least some money, because you're working a lot. You definitely deserve that. And finally, if the choir is traveling someplace, if they have a performance someplace and you need to be there as a choir director, it's really not fair if you have to pay for your travel expenses and for your accommodation. Don't spend your own money in order to work with your choir. If you're not getting paid, listen, if you're not getting money to work with your choir, at least do not put yourself in a position to spend your own money. That's not fair. That's really not fair. And it's a different thing if you want to support the choir, if the choir really doesn't have the money or the budget and everybody has to pitch in to make the choir better. I've been in those situations. I worked as a volunteer. There are many cases in which I didn't ask for the full amount of money I deserved. But again, if the choir has the budget and the choir expects you to be there and to work your best, then you definitely do not need to spend your own money to work with your choir. All this money talk, I feel... But I know this is the correct way to do it. Again, I'm not asking to be rich. I feel like it's unfair that choir directors out there feel guilty because they ask for money. And if this video helped you to get some power, then my work here is done. I know it is a privileged position to be in a situation when I can turn down a job because it's not enough money for me. But that particular situation came just now, 12 years into my career, and it came from a place of appreciating my work. It took a really long time to realize that it's not the same if it's me working as a choir director and some other person. And at the beginning of my career, I had worked for free and it was okay. I don't think I was robbed in any way. There is something about getting the experience, getting the appreciation, getting the CV line, getting the recognition. I have done many things for free in order to develop my career, but at a certain point, there comes a point when you have to take everything into consideration. You don't have an indefinite amount of time, especially if you want to have other things other than your career. And if you have ever worked as a choir director, you know how much effort it takes to work with people, the amount of energy it takes to work with people. I had a concert 4 days ago and I am so physically exhausted. It took me 3 days to get to a place where I do not feel exhausted. I don't think that money can compensate for all the beautiful experiences we have, but it's not fair if we do everything and not have something to live off when it comes to money. It is always a difficult thing to explain to people the amount of education and knowledge and experience and continuous development to be a good musician. And it's the same with this channel. I have to consider that in order to be able to do this channel for you, I have to speak a foreign language because I'm not a native English speaker. So the amount of time it took in my life to learn English to be able to do this is something to consider. So that is just one example of things being worth it. I hope you get what you want and get what you deserve when it comes to money, or more, but at least a fair amount of money for the valuable work you do. So I've done that. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. If you wish to see more from Enquire to Acquire, you can. There is a great playlist here if you are here for the first time. You can subscribe. You can watch the other videos here. If you have a question of any kind, you can email me. And I hope you stick around on the channel. Thank you for watching and thank you for being here. Conduct well, conductors, and I'll see you next time. Bye!